The federal government is coming up with a policy that will remove the ownership of liquefied petroleum gas as cooking gas cylinders from consumers. They said this move is meant to safeguard, ensure the safety of consumers in using those gas cylinders and leave the burden of maintenance on the distributors. But your thoughts on this?
Yes, this is a wonderful development by the government. This information was announced by the Senior Technical Assistant to the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources on Downstream and Infrastructure, that's Brenda Ataga. And she mentioned that what the government will be looking at doing now is that they're actually commissioning 600,000 cylinders, LPG cylinders, to distributors on credit now to the distributors, so that what now tends to happen is that you would no longer require to buy the cylinders or be the owners of the cylinders now. What you would actually be paying for now is the gas itself. So normally what usually tends to happen is that you would have to buy the cylinders itself before you can now start to refill it. And every time you go to the gas stations for refill, they would refill your original cylinders. But in this case, what would now happen is that it would just be an exchange, and there will be no need for you to refill your gas at the filling stations or at the plant. What would tend to happen is that you just have a replacement. And the reason for that is, of course, it's to foster more usage of gas cylinders. You know, the government has actually been on a drive recently to encourage more gas cylinder usages, discourage cooking with fire, with kerosene and firewood and whatnot, because of course it's more environmentally friendly to use gas cylinders. So what they're trying to do is lower the cost barriers of using gas.
And also probably seeking to clamp down on illegal roadside LPG dealers, because that's part of an informal sector that's not regulated or has so far been unregulated. And my only concern with this might not be, it might be considered secondary, but I remember back in the day where I say back in the day, it still exists actually. People go buy rather gas and refill with their own cylinders at 7 stations. But I grew up getting used to the fact that sometimes I always complain that also if you hand in your old cylinder, you get one that's even worse
than the one
in
you
condition
handed in.
than the one you handed in. So you have issues of that, bordering on that. It's almost like the Naira notes. So how do you ensure the integrity of gas cylinders, the containers themselves?
I mean, this is part of what this policy should address too, because just as you mentioned, in the same vein, you could also have a faulty gas cylinder, you using a faulty gas cylinder for quite a while without actually knowing it.
Not necessarily faulty, so the body looks rusted.
But
the what they call it now, the gas regulator itself might be working perfectly.
Yes, not necessarily, but it could also be faulty. So what this would address as well is that they are meant to be inspecting all the gas cylinders too. So when there are faulty ones, they're meant to take it in, decommission it, and then give you a proper one.
Excellent. Thank you, Gbolahan. Let's move on to Deveo for this next story now. It's a very sad one, but just 2 years and a few months. That's a year, and let's get the precise period after this happened. And it's 2 years and 5 months after the crime. Justice has been passed on the Cameroonian cook. His name is Joel Lejo. He was employed by one Dayo in Lagos, Dayo Eniola Adeleke, and she was brutally slaughtered by this guy. She was killed in her own home. He asked for a 2-week salary advance, and that was not obliged according to them. So that was what preempted the terrible situation.
Yes, I'd like to first of all do a point of note. The headline: Lagos court sentences Cameroonian cook to death for killing boss. And this is a bit mischievous on the editorial part.
Sure.
This is not what we accuse others for. We should not also commit the same crime. In the sense that the real message here is about the household help tragedy and not about the nationality at stake. Nigeria and Cameroon do share good relations, and by bringing that out and mentioning it severally through the article, it seems as if our issues with Cameroonians.
Yes.
Secondly, foreign house helps have been growing in Nigeria for a while now, and the reason simply is because of the extra competence they bring to bear. So let's just get that right. Now, to the story, yes, it took place about 2.5 years now. As we say, law takes a while before justice comes, but there was a conviction to death row here in the Lagos courts, and the family has said that their daughter was dastardly deprived of her life, her joy, her marriage, and her future, and now that she can rest, now that justice has been passed. Now, to the main issues in short, there is a problem here because the story also states that Dio, while she was alive, employed this poor refugee, that was Joel, from Cameroon, to help him out, in a bid to help him out, and that this took place just barely 2 months after his employment. Now, there are issues here because this begins to check our belief in charity. Many of us different times help people out just for the sake of helping them out and being charitable, and then we face some certain, or we lose in some certain way or the other. Should we keep giving? In those days when people used to pick up people on the road, now you can't pick up simply because of the dangers involved. Now, the problem here is that this begins to talk about the household help tragedies that many Nigerians face, and it's not just in elite places. Practically most families and homes have challenges and go through daily swaps of house helps. Now, what I would like to bring to the air is that, you see, we need to begin to review our understanding of keeping people at home for house helps, in as much as we believe that we have need for them, but it's actually something that you should pay for, in the sense that you should get trained people. Don't pick people up from the village.
It's a
Don't
service.
pick people up from who are close to you, who are just recommended to you from friends. Seek out companies that can provide you and vouch for some of these house helps, because there's so many crimes that are attributed, especially many domestic crimes are attributed to many of these domestics. As a member of the PCRC, one of the major campaigns that we have been on is the profiling of house helps amongst homes.
And PCRC meaning?
That's the Police Committee, Community Relations.
Okay.
Now, the police has constantly asked Nigerians, families, to bring their house helps to the police for profiling, so they can get their names, confirm where they're from, who knows them, in case things happen, and also in a way check their character, because in most cases when you just bring someone from the village or from a friend, you don't know who they are or what they could do. I mean, I had a friend slaughtered in pieces in Abuja simply because he had some things at home that his house help wanted, and he connived with some armed robbers, and they came and they cut them up in pieces. It's been happening all the time. So Nigerians need to be careful in their employment of house helps. Ensure you get those that are trained. Ensure, because most times you leave your valuables, you leave your vulnerable places to them, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, the cleaners, the gardeners, the cooks. Ensure that you get the ones that are trained, one. Secondly, ensure that you also profile them with the police, because you just never know when they're planning. Most times the police have said that crimes that they have been able to investigate and get to the bottom of are people who have profiled their domestics. In one way or the other, the guards conniving with the other guards on the street, or conniving with the cook, or conniving with the cleaner. They're always having a way of doing this. So not to kill the profession. It is a dignified profession, but we must get it right.
All right, thank you very much, Devo. And background checks are very important. I feel that's one of the most apt points that Devo just made on this story. Let's take your messages. Remember that WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981.
Okay, so on gas cylinders, Obi from Apapa says gas cylinders are potential hazards in every home they are found. Can we trust the government to manage the lives at stake here, or are we heading for reports of gas cylinder explosions? This policy makes me uncomfortable, as I'm not certain the risk factors have been adequately attended to. And another one here.
Bengus says, most of us do not know that these gas cylinders have expiry dates written on them. We must buy and use without, so we just buy and use without checking. So we should be very careful with that.
And Yinka says, Gbolahan, do we look like a learner? Okay, when they told us they have removed service charge for electricity bills, what happened next? A month later, they increased the unit price of 1 kilowatt. So in a way, the service charge was added into the increase. So what's the point? Now we have gas cylinder blues again. Suddenly the FG, the federal government cares about us. Trust me, the price of gas itself is about to go up. Please tell them to make the cost of fire extinguishers affordable.
Hmm. And that is a rumor. It's not true that the gas prices or price of gas cylinders will go up. It's not. It's just going to be regulated. Perhaps it might even come down.
It's actually a subsidy program.
Yes,
They
it's a
just
subsidy
subsidize
program,
the
so it might be
price
subsidized.
for the cylinder while
Mhm.
you just trade.
That's right.
And it's to encourage you so that you can take that price off your normal purchase.
That is right. Thank you for clearing that up, Devo. Let's move on to this next one, Devo. This story is from Premium Times. Representatives move to criminalize use of plastic bags. So when I saw this headline, I immediately just flashed to Kenya and flashed to, I think Kigali enforced that as well. Rwanda enforced that because I remember, yes, I remember one of my trips that I had. In fact, I saw a plastic bag in my bag because I was trying to search for my passport. And as soon as the lady, the concierge, cited it, she said, "Oga, please put that thing inside the bag where you were talking before you're arrested." So, I mean, this might be it, but similar to that, the House of Representatives here in Nigeria has adopted a report on a bill for an act to, among other things, prohibit the use, manufacture, and importation of plastic bags for commercial and household packaging. Devo, your thoughts on this entire story?
Here we go again. National Assembly fat cats, please, your job is not only to ban and prohibit, abrogate. What is it? Let us get creative. Now, this bill has passed second reading, going to the third, and it's supposed to prohibit the manufacturing, the use and importation of plastic bags, otherwise known as tampolin, nylon, for commercial and household packaging. Now, it's based on the fact that the report came that the utilization has been detrimental to the ecosystem in terms of rivers, lakes, forests. You know how it gets filled up at dumps, blocks our drainages, etc. and co. Now, it's coming. It was being sponsored by Mohammed Mungunu, APC Borno State. Now, what he mentioned, what he was recommending was that retailers should offer paper bags to customers at point of sale, and that if you use a plastic bag, you'll be guilty of an offense. And those who were caught are punishable by 500,000 or jail term in excess of 3 years. And for companies caught producing, 5 million naira. Now, like I said, it's past the second reading. But I think, and I'm asking every Nigerian to call on your representatives to think through this. Yes, there are countries that have implemented the total ban.
Yes.
Like you mentioned Kenya,
Kigali,
Rwanda, Tanzania recently. What I say to that is small population, easy control. It's easy for them to do that because of the numbers that they're dealing with. But in a nation like Nigeria, I think due to our large population, one, second, our penchant for using it, and thirdly, our economic deficit in terms of the fact that we don't have enough funds. This is an opportunity to raise IGR. Now, following the UK South African model, I mean, we're all aware when you get to the point of sale in South Africa, you hear plastic, meaning do you want a plastic bag? Now, if you say yes, they will charge you 10 rand. In the UK, about 5p, right? Now, this is an opportunity for government to raise internally generated revenue from the use of something that many people have need of. Alternatively, in most retail shops, you'll see them, if you cannot afford the plastic bag, they'll offer you to buy a paper bag or a what do you call that bag again? The weave, the jute bag that you can use that's reusable over and over again.
Yeah, but the need for it here in Nigeria, I don't think it can be underscored, or rather, it can be downplayed because of the environmental factors. We find that the way we dispose of these bags is abhorrent, to say the least. If you go not too far away, just beyond that Abraham Adesanya area, you see in the medians, you see a lot of plastic bags littered everywhere, and it's even polluting our waterways.
Yes, unfortunately, I think that is where we kill this whole idea, because the truth is, enforcement and application of our environmental sanctions needs to be enforced. There was a reason why the government at some time enforced environmental, right? In the days of Buhari's first tenure, we had Kai, that was kick against indiscipline, whereby every citizen made it a duty to catch or to enforce environmental sanctions on people.
So the first tenure, that's back in the 80s, right?
Back in the 80s,
That's war against the discipline.
war against the discipline.
Yes.
Not Kai. Kai is the recent one.
Recent one, yes.
We can still go back to those days because we ourselves are the enforcers of the rules and the laws that we have to stop people from peeing on the roads, stop people from defecating on the roads,
Mhm.
stop people from throwing and plastic
From
bags or
bad
any form of
behavior.
litter. Anyhow,
Yeah.
so I think that's what should be encouraged instead of killing an opportunity that has employed many, that has produced what do you call it? Profitability,
Mm.
and as well as I said, internal generated revenue for
Mm.
government.
All right. Thank you, Deveo. Let's quickly touch on some messages and then continue to the next story. This one is from Bidemi. Bidemi says,
Okay, Bidemi says Tanzania's ban on the use of plastic bags takes effect from June 1st, 2019.
Mhm.
That's good.
and EJ says, so how do we package meat and fish without nylon? Recycling should be the goal, not banning. Recycling is key, but we'll start
You
somewhere.
can
The
do that with
optics.
paper bags.
On the money.
Paper bags.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Dami says, good one from the House of Reps. The impact on the environment for Lagos alone is alarming. Let them ban plastic. We will use reusable bags or paper bags.
Thank you, DG. Next story, very quickly from the Guardian newspaper. Army faults Wike's allegation against the GOC. That's General Officer commanding 6th Division and Land Component Commander of Operation Delta Safe, Major General Jamil Salam. They're alleging that the allegations actually that's made by the River State Governor Nyesom Wike against the GOC are false allegations. Well, Wike alleged that he was funding or sponsoring an illegal oil bunkering squad to finance his ambition to become chief of army staff.
Well, it's not today that Wike has been fighting everybody against him. But if you did watch the video, he had a bone to pick, especially with the commander of the Operation of Delta Safe, Major General Jamil Sarham. And in accusing him like this, if you notice in the video, the army officials that were there
Yes.
didn't say anything. Eventually, the army did come out and make a statement that they were false. Now, yes, they have, in a way, tried to respect the governor, but I also believe that the governor, in trying to, whether he has a case or not, that was a wrong approach. I mean, he should have called directly. He knows what to do if he wants to report a case. Title telling does not solve anything.
Well, you know, Wike is not one to just call you
Yes,
in private.
I know.
He will
and
call you out.
he will call you out. But what I expected from him was to do the dutiful thing.
Right.
I mean, if he really wanted to get this down, the chief of armed forces there, and as the chief security officer within the state, he can even discuss with the presidency direct, and they will deal with it immediately. We should be careful of how we manage information, of how things are done, because when you begin to put out information like this, it's not just a blame on the officer that you have spoken about. It's a complete defamation of the army as a whole.
Thank you.
All right. This next story is from the Vanguard newspaper, and Adedumade, I'm coming to you with this one. The Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, is targeting maritime tourism as a means of growing the nation's economy, and it's calling for a concerted effort by stakeholders towards development of coastal and maritime tourism in Nigeria. How well do you think this works? What are your thoughts?
Well, generally, I think the call makes sense. You know, I've always asked myself, why can't we have things like scuba diving or surfing in Lagos?
No, but it's true.
Seriously,
Yes.
because we have places that can accommodate such games. and
Eco Atlantic is
activities for
one.
people.
Boko.
What?
Even our
Well,
bitches, I mean,
Even our bitches, yeah. So we definitely have the resources to do this, and I think is one of the places we should actually put our eye in regard to boosting our economy. But of course, we all know that there are some certain problems that will come with it, even from the government side, from the people side, that is the people who are in those host communities, and also from the side of the investor who wants to go into the business. For instance, now we have a coastline that measures about, I think, 853 kilometers, and we have a lot of inland ways, we have a lot of marine ways, then we have beautiful sceneries all across the country, you know, and most of this spreads all the way from the north to the south, and also from the east to the west. So it's actually a really good idea. But of course, some of the issues that will come up will be security, piracy. How are you going to be able to protect the lives and property of these people, and also the investment of people who will be putting the cash on the job? Then there's also the issue of border patrol, because I've always said that NIMASA they are in charge of protecting our borders, our waterways, actually, particularly, and they
With the
do
Navy.
this. Yes, they do this in partnership with the Navy, and that is why, even as an aside, they have refused, or they don't want to get into a union, because they believe that their services are part of the services that are very important to security of life. So because of that, we're going to have a problem with security. Now, when you're talking about investment, it's going to cost a lot of money to actually invest in this parts of the country. For instance, now look at the beaches in Lagos. We are losing them, slowly.
Yes.
I remember back when we were younger, and we used to go to this beach from back in the day. I even can't remember the name.
Kuramo.
Not even that is where Kuramo is now, but
Bar Beach.
Bar Beach.
It used to be the main
yes.
place.
It used to be the main beach back then, but not anymore. So that is going to be a major problem, and because of that, it's going to cost a lot to invest.
Yes,
in
but let's
those areas.
stop looking at the problems. Let's look at the solutions, because we want this.
Now,
we know
great,
we want
great.
We
this.
know we can
We
do
go to
this.
small countries in Africa, and we see foreigners coming there round the clock.
Great.
And
Security.
We know the amount of revenue generated
Security.
from
Yes,
maritime
I
and
said it's
tourism.
a great idea. If we can get it right. But the truth is, it takes more than just coming to say we can do this without
Sound
actually
bites.
having
A plan.
A structure.
exactly, and not just a plan, but a structure that works and supports such an investment. If not, then we're just coming
Can
to
I
just
quickly
talk.
add that I want to call out government in full blooming lights. First of all, I have many friends who live and own property on the coastal sides of Nigeria, starting from Lagos, and all of them complain that they pay 5 different government agencies taxes who come every month and ensure that they are paid.
And that's the
So,
multiplicity of taxes.
Yeah, so
problem
first
that
of
we
all,
have.
government is the first hindrance, because most times they're trying to charge a fee that is affordable to Nigerians, and government comes, pay this, pay this, pay this, pay this, pay this. At the end of the day, how will it survive? So government, NIMASA is only playing to the gallery. They don't mean it. If they did, they would actually address the real issues concerning tourism along the coastal areas.
I agree.
Basically.
All right, but we do need to move on so that we can take some other stories. And Gbolahan, I'm coming to you with this from the Thisday newspaper. The Federation Accounts Allocation Committee has shared about 616.198 billion naira to the 3 tiers of government for the month of April. The committee announced that the balance in the excess crude account is $144 million.
Yes, very interesting.
Interesting,
I mean, I'll
right?
start with the excess crude account, $144 million. As at March,
Change.
in our excess crude account, we had $183 million. So gradually that money is been depleting on a month-by-month basis. I remember quite a few years ago, we were talking about $2 billion in the excess crude account, and the governors were talking about sharing the money. Now, here we are once more, usual, on a month-on-month basis, with the states go cap in hand to the federal government, and their money is allocated. This time around, we're talking about 616 billion naira that was shared for the April allocation. And as usual, the money was shared. $253 billion, naira went to the federal government, 168 billion to the state, and 126 billion to the local government. I would like to point out that as of March, this money, 616 billion that was shared, has dropped by 1.3 billion as against the month of March. So we're gradually seeing our allocations depleting on a month-by-month basis. I remember a few years ago, just maybe a year ago, we were talking about 700 billion naira as the minimum that was being shared across the 3 tiers of government, and there was an uproar then by the state government complaining that the amount that was being allocated was too little, and there was a lot of mistrust between the state and the federal government because of monies that were meant to have been paid into the fact account.
That's a federal allocation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
federal allocation account by the NNPC, which wasn't actually paid, or the LNG as at that point in time. So
I think you're referring, sorry, to the Treasury single accounts as TSA.
no, it's the fact account.
Okay.
It's the fact. So money was meant to be put in the fact, but it was used as funds
Subsidy.
for subsidy. So there you are. So and the funny thing is here, the story does mention that in the month of April, we've actually seen an increase in the petroleum profit tax that was generated. We've seen an increase in the import duty and companies income tax. We've seen an increase in the royalty and export duty. No, sorry. We've seen an increase in all of those, but there's actually been a decrease in oil royalty and export duty. And I mean, the reason for this is simply because right now at the moment we have quite a lot of oil just waiting at our bay, waiting to be supplied. I mean, there's about 25 cargoes
Of
of oil that is not being sold yet. So Nigeria's oil at the moment, we're having a bit of a challenge selling.
To offload them.
Yep, to offload.
On Twitter, we have a message from Odini. He says it's insufficient to pass this bill on plastic bags. Can we enforce it? The masses in call. Have you seen the number of takeaway bags that come out of the gutters when it rains? Let them be realistic. More messages here on WhatsApp. We have this one from Ifoma Okorie. Says, good morning. Our senator started again. Another pipe dream. This plastic ban, while an idea is ill-timed, the idea is ill-timed and ill thought out. We have forgotten why plastic is so widely used here. It is a byproduct of our crude and therefore cheap. It is the wrapping material of choice for the masses. We do not have paper or jute industry that can readily replace plastic. They should devise a roadmap that will allow us transition to a plastic bag-free environment over a few years. An overnight ban will not work and unenforceable in the present day Nigeria.
Interesting thought there. There's an interesting story for you, Adedumade, from the Punch newspaper. This has been an issue that have debated for quite a while, and the House of Representatives yesterday passed a bill abolishing the dichotomy between the higher national diploma and Bachelor of Science holders. What do you think? This should be good for HND holders, right?
Well, yes, you said something that there's been a lot of debate, and it is that debate that has come together into what we have now. So it is not just that they have passed this at the House of Rep. Even the federal government or the part of the executive have been doing something about this as well. For instance, last month, Buhari signed the law or passed the directive that scrapped the difference between BSc and HND in the civil service. And also the federal government has taken some other actions in regard to polytechnics in Nigeria. For instance, they've scrapped the HNDs, which means that they will no longer be admitting students into HNDs. Now it will be called a BTech, which is a Bachelor's of Technology, which is actually great. And also 70% of the non-technical courses in polytechnics will be scrapped, which actually also makes a lot of sense as well. Then also there's something about control of the polytechnics will be ceded to the nearest university in that space. So the university will be responsible for picking someone who will serve as a provost for the polytechnics. I think it's actually good because there's really no difference when you talk about the output from someone who's gone to the university and someone who's been to the
Is that really not a difference?
No, that was a trick question.
Are you from Polytechnic?
No. Well, that is a trick question because why I like your reactions is that you all think there is a difference. So if there is a difference, I think that difference should be addressed, especially in the quality of output of the students that they put out in the polytechnic.
I think the difference
now
to say is the quality of the output and not the degree itself.
Yes, the quality of the output. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That is why they aim to solve that is because the polytechnics are now going to be going under the universities. So the universities will be in charge of that. So I think that's how they intend to solve that.
And I also think it's the quality of inputs because I mean you can't give what you don't have. So if the lecturers do not give the right knowledge or impact the right education to you, what do you?
Yes.
Once again, we're banning because they couldn't utilize polytechnic graduates that had a purpose and a use. Okay, they serve a purpose in the vocational world.
Technical.
But Nigerians,
That was
with
what
their
I was gonna
strata
say.
stigmatization, now you're asking polytechnic graduates to become university graduates. No, that doesn't solve the problem.
Mm.
Who's going to do the work that technicians do? Who's going to do the work?
No, that is the
We're out
thing.
of
The
time.
technical
That's-
courses will
Out
continue.
of
No,
time.
we-
We're
we-
done.
It's a long
We can't
conversation.
talk anymore. Let's take this conversation to social media. In fact, during Lagos Talks 981, we're going to continue talking about this ban of
Yes.
plastic bags
Okay.
as passed by the House of Representatives. Well, thank you so much, all our analysts. Deveo Okorie at Deveo Okorie on Twitter. Adedumade is by the same name on Twitter.
Yes,
Adedumade.
guys, have a great week.
And Gbolahan is at Mr. G Quest. Next.